SCRC May. Mhm.
All right, and we're live on YouTube.
Good.
So we're good to start, Claire.
That's great. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate you joining us on this nice sunny Friday afternoon. How about we start with an approval of the agenda? Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda of this meeting for May 1st?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All against, please say nay. So that passes. And let's move on to the approval of the minutes from the April 17th meeting. Do I hear a motion for that?
I so moved.
Great.
I'll second it.
And do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, great. Okay. And all in favor, please say aye.
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 All against, please say nay. Great. Passes as well. Let's move on to some reports. So could I start off with OPD, Laura?
Let me unmute myself. Kind of the same report as last time, although I think that social distancing kind of complaints will be even more prevalent for us, which kind of does put us in an awkward position. So I understand the frustrations that the students, in particular, the students and parents will have with moving out. But we hope that everybody is cognizant and knowledgeable about it and will respect that. We don't want to be put in a bad position to have to enforce that. And it is a bad position because the cops really do take a beating for that in the media when it's really not our, we're just the enforcers of it.
Hey, Laura. The current state statute for gatherings is 10 or less, correct?
Correct.
And when you get reports from people, do they normally tell you how many people are gathered, or do they just say there's a large gathering and you need to do
Both.
something about it?
Both. So they'll say there's 11 people. Well, as it turns out, those 11 people live there, perhaps, or sometimes they'll just say it's a large gathering and they won't even give an address. They'll say somewhere on Church Street. It's they'll complain about people walking together down the sidewalk.
Mhm.
And but they always call anonymously, so we cannot call them back to educate them either. So it's a one-way information railway. It's so we can't stop it, the calls, to try to correct them because they won't give their information.
Mhm.
Would you consider putting a post out with basic guidelines and say like, hey, these are things that are legal, like walking with a partner of yours or having a gathering of 10 or less people is still legal. You might not want to do it, but it's still legal. So please don't do this.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I have considered it, but in some ways I feel like it opens up. It's just a delicate balance to strike, to where I don't really want to be the one that says you can't do this. You might. This is the governor. This is the health departments that are saying this stuff. And so I don't want it to, the fingers tend to be pointed at us like these are our rules. Does anybody understand that mentality? and I don't know if I'm off base though. I know I can kind of anticipate the kind of reactions that we would get. And I do try to avoid walking myself into a bad situation.
Is there currently,
Well, and there are clearly people that don't want to be, or that are arguing that their rights are being so infringed by any of this. And that's existent in this community just like it is worse in other places. So I really feel for you guys. And
You can't ignore that. You can't ignore that section of people because that is a growing frustration that's coming. And so we do need to pay attention to that. You can't just ignore it. And you just can't say, you do what we say. These are the rules. And so you try to educate, you try to find that nice balance that says, okay, I totally get that you want to party. Totally get it. Here's a better way to do it that would be in compliance, be a little creative. It's a challenge for sure.
are
What
there
about-
current violations?
What's that?
Are there current violations of, I guess you would say the shelter in place orders or the gathering orders?
Yeah, I mean, we've had 2 violations, and really those were not gathering related. Those were individual, in particular, they were people that were on drugs that were darting out in the street, and we had nothing, we had nowhere to put them. The jail won't be, the jail's not taking people. So it was legitimate, but it was creative work. We have to find a place for this person. It's not safe for them to be out here. But no, as far as gatherings, we have not. We have really tried to educate and be tolerant. And just because we go to the same house doesn't mean it's the same players involved.
yeah,
I'm not going to say that we've done the best job at keeping track of names at those houses to try to keep track, but that is kind of a lot to be asking when things are active. And so we were hoping at, up till this point that we would get, because we were being cooperative, we would get true voluntary compliance. I do worry about these next couple of weeks. Because I do worry, like maybe even the parents will be kind of obstinate about it. Like, my God, this is a rite of passage. And my daughter, she's raised her since she was in kindergarten for this very moment. And so I'm prepared for that. And then you add alcohol to it, and then there's nonsense all over the place. I'm anticipating.
What about face masks? I know in New York City, they've got policemen at the subway stations that you can't go on unless you have a face mask on it.
Well, I mean, our governor's orders are clear, and it's the employees of retail businesses and that need face masks, and the customers, it's optional, encouraged.
Okay.
And we ask that everybody read the order. We read the order to be very specific. So we really encourage everybody to read the order. And maybe that's another good thing to put out there to the public is, here's an amended order. Read it. Glenn, I'm going to really think about what you're saying and I'm going to ponder it.
Yeah, I know that's not an easy task, and I would not want to do it. So,
well, and at least, Laura, it doesn't come out from Laura Fenning. It comes out, as Oxford Police. So, but I guess a lot of us realize that you're the author in many of those posts, and which we so enjoy and learn from. Thank you very much.
Actually, it is beneficial sometimes to have it from an individual. So like if there's criticism or something, they don't want, I think people tend to resist that machine, the big, the entity as a whole. And so then I'll say, and I'll sign it for me. Like, hey, if you have any problems, email me, call me.
Just remember the buck stops on the chief's desk. So,
You like the postscript every time. Anyway.
So you could start at message from chief.
Does anybody have any questions about that? There's not much else to say, other than it's a work in progress and still, and we get lots of weird complaints about it every day.
Is there any comparison between OU and Bowling Green and any of the other state schools?
You know, that's a good question, Prue. I do know that our chief had spoken with the chief at, it's either Athens or I think it was Athens. And
Uh-huh.
they I think they probably had more problems than we are having.
Mhm.
And they had written this was probably 2.5 weeks ago. They had written 5 or 6 people. I'm assuming he was referring to college students. I don't know. This is the way it was implied. So yeah, I would be curious. I think we should reach out to them. It's a good point.
But I think
Well,
the
and
number of cases in Athens County is also a lot lower than around here. So their exposure to knowing people who have been affected by it will likely be different than Oxford. Because I think just about all of us have known somebody who has been infected or has died at this point. Am I correct in that assessment, everybody?
Yes.
Hmm.
Susan, I know that you don't have voice or video, but could you use the chat bar to tell us anything that's going on within the Miami PD that supports or sees anything different than Laura's talking about?
Can you hear me? I think I have voice.
Oh, yes, you do.
Great,
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I mean, we're seeing the same thing. We get complaints about people on Cookfield, but generally that's under a group that's under 10 people there. And we go and talk to them. They're very compliant. Most people I've seen around campus do have masks on. As far as the PD itself goes, we're going back to our regular staffing starting tomorrow. So we were down to our bare bones staffing, but now we're going back to regular staffing starting tomorrow.
That's nice news.
Yeah, but all the students that we've had contact with, mostly at Cookfield and some of the off-campus ones we've gone to with OPD, all the students have been very compliant and very understanding. And like Laura said, they're usually housemates and they live together anyway, so they're not violating anything. Now, I did hear a rumor, and I don't know how true it is, that some seniors are coming back into town these next couple of weeks. So there may be an uptick in party calls and that kind of thing, but I haven't noticed any huge influx of students or anything like that.
Are there any other odd things going on in terms of theft, an increase or a change in thefts or drug use or?
Well, no, just the opposite, because we don't have the population. So the drug use has gone down because we don't have anybody here. So we don't have any drug complaints. We have had a couple of thefts of bicycles that people have, obviously when they left town, they didn't take some of their bicycles and stuff. So had a couple of those. That's really about it. It's been pretty, I don't want to say the Q word, but it's been nice here. So yeah, we haven't really had many issues, to be honest.
Thanks, Laura. Is that about the same for you guys?
You know, I can just say anecdotally, I don't know if the data would support it. So it feels to me like there's more domestic problems, more domestic calls, and more weird drug calls and stuff like that. And honest, or at least mental episodes. But was it just that I'm not distracted now by the other calls? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, eventually I think we'll have to go back, and it'd be interesting to look at like the number of calls, types of calls. But that's is domestics, episodes, and drug abuse type stuff, under the influence, that kind of thing. It's unpleasant stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else anyone would like to ask for the 2 police departments before we move on? Okay, sounds good. Okay, then actually, before we continue on, I would like to propose a motion to rearrange the agenda. into new business, item D, to have Jessica Green speak a bit about a few things. She's going to join at about 3:30, and she has a few things that she'd like to go over. So I just want to make sure that we're okay with everyone. I'm going. Does anyone? Do I hear a second for that?
I second.
Great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay.
And Jessica just joined us.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, you look at that. So I'm just going to introduce that into the agenda. And great. So how about we move on to old business really quickly. So I'll pass this on to Amy to speak a bit about the Coalition for a Healthy Community.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick update. We were very pleased with the participation in the Let's Get Active campaign. A huge shout out and thanks to you, Andrew, for assisting with all the technical side of it when people are submitting their minutes. We had 228 individuals participate, and our goal, honestly, we just kind of came up with a random goal of 40,000 minutes, and we ended up getting 168,000 minutes worth of activity. So people were really moving, and I got a lot of feedback from community members that they loved it. They want to do another one. And so that was really fun. So thank you to everybody who helped promote it, and we'll see what we can come up with next.
Thanks for doing that. Great initiative, Amy. And okay, so let's move on a little bit to new business. Actually, how about we start off with Jessica since she just joined us? Let's see.
Okay. I think you wanted me to present an update on the business stimulus program. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like the gift card program.
Yes, so we developed a business stimulus program that has two parts. The first part was $200,000 went to the Community Improvement Corporation to then purchase gift cards from local brick and mortar businesses. And the goal is that we'll sit on those gift cards for a little while and then resell them to the general public. And those gift cards can be used from August 1st, 2020 through July 31st of 2021. And I met with the CIC board last week, and they decided to kind of do a flat amount to every business that applied. And so the first round is we purchased $2,000 in gift cards from 61 businesses. So that was our first round, and we actually have checks ready to go out to the businesses today. So those will be going to the post office this afternoon. And then we'll start making the actual gift cards and making an e-commerce website to resell those. The Miami University PSC Business Fraternity is helping me build that e-commerce website. So that's been a really nice outreach. And we're using one that will use the credit card processing that already exists at Miami University of Oxford. We have a little bit of money left in that. And so we've extended a round two kind of like bonus round for businesses that either missed the first round of application or who just need a little bit more, and preference will be given to businesses that are absolutely shuttered right now. Like they can't be open at all. And preference will also be given to businesses that are locally owned. So people who live in Oxford. So that's one program, and it's in progress. The other is the Emergency Small Business Loan Program. This is a $5,000 loan that is zero interest, that we greatly shrink the application process so that if businesses want to do it, it's pretty quick turnaround with only a few supporting documents in order to apply. It's still a loan, but it's a zero interest loan. So the goal is that you could get that and then buy some time, and they can pay it back starting like a year from now. So that program has also been released. We've had 2 applicants for that program, but I just sent a reminder out to all businesses about that program yesterday. And I'm meeting with the CIC board next Friday to review those applications and also the final gift card program. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you so much for sharing. That's incredible information. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, shoot them out, or feel free to bring them up at any other part of the meeting. But if not, we can move on, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And okay, so let's move on to revisiting the SCRC composition. This is kind of more like looking on to next year. And actually, before we go in, I'd like to announce something. We have the lovely Megan Hess, actually, that was just elected as my replacement for next year. So she's your she's gonna be your new Secretary for Off-Campus Affairs in the next school year. And so yeah, how about I'm gonna just switch over to you, Andrew, to speak a bit about the SCRC composition for next year. Anything you'd like to point out?
Well, two things. What we found out in the transition this year for SCRC was that the chair of the group should be voted on and selected by the voting members of the SCRC. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention, as well as we've talked about the SCRC composition, and I try to revisit this at least every 2 years, or I'd like to revisit it every 2 years. Are the proper groups represented here? Do we need to make recommendations to City Council about reorganizing SCRC? So I just want to put that topic out there for discussion, just to get thoughts and suggestions, recommendations from the group.
Who are you thinking might be represented who's not?
I'm sorry, Cheryl, can you repeat that?
Yeah, who are you thinking in terms of groups that aren't currently represented?
It's just more of an open question. I think that the original intention for SCRC is that it would reflect the community of students and residents. I do know that we have some seats in the composition that haven't been represented for several years here now. So the international students and the fraternity and sorority students as well.
Yeah, and Andrew, I was going to say that, if you go back 7 or 8 weeks ago, we'd had a conversation about IFC and Panhellenic joining, and then we scattered. So I think that's still on the table, that we could fill those seats in the fall. We just had that conversation, I want to say early February, mid-February. Am I remember that right, Andrew?
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. I guess I'm surprised they're not represented yet. So
I think it's that they were unfilled. Is that right, Andrew? So it wasn't that there's spots there for them, they just weren't coming. Is that,
okay.
do I understand that right, Andrew?
Yeah, the last two students left in kind of a revolt, or like maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep. So I think we could fill those in the fall. I think you and I were talking about having them come sometime in February or March, and then all this happened. So if those slots are there, we could fill them.
And we still have this difference between voting and non-voting positions. Are those voting positions?
They are ex officio, so they would be non-voting.
So I wonder if, that's one thing I think maybe we should revisit. Because why would you want to spend some time on something where you really have no say? I seriously believe
they would be more intentional about their participation if they knew that it meant something. And, there might be a project that they bring forward. So
well, I would really like to see the frats and sororities participating more, because they have so many off-campus residents and are possibly behind a lot of the house parties and other things.
I think they could help us by informing us of what was happening and coming along, just the way we could inform them that these were things that we thought that the townspeople thought were important.
Well, and plus they also bring for projects. I mean, there's also a lot of, they just bring a lot of bodies that are able to help with certain things that come up through the year as well too. So it's a good group to have on there.
And what about from the, so what about from the community side then? The permanent residents here.
Does it have to be equal? Is it equal? Well, we're 1, 2,
It's-
3, 4, 5. There's like 5.
I
or
believe
more.
that there are 6. Yeah, go ahead,
2.
Glenn.
So when you're talking about allowing the IFC or the Panhandle guys a vote, or the AAA or international student representation a vote, you're talking about giving representatives a vote. And that's why they're ex officios. They're representing a bunch of other people, much like the members that we have are representing the students in general or representing the public in general. One of my questions is how come everybody is not a voting member? It seems like we have half of the people are ex officio in the group and then the other half aren't. It gets kind of confusing that way. And if we're already thinking about including student representatives as voting members because it would introduce more incentive for them to participate, why not just make it easy and say everybody can vote?
Yeah, that's where I was coming from. I didn't make that clear.
Because I mean, I would love to see, the police have a vote, and Miami University's administration.
I'm used to having the philosophy of a conflict of interest. Like I can't personally have any opinion on anything in this line of work. That might have to be pondered.
I mean, you can always abstain.
Boy, she'd never open her mouth about anything.
I have a vote now. I still speak.
I know, I'm teasing you.
Just saying for simplicity of ordinances and bylaws and things like that, you allow everybody to have a vote, but allow everyone to be able to abstain without providing a reason. Like on council, if we abstain, we have to provide a reason. We could write it into the bylaws of the SCRC. Everyone gets a vote. However, everyone can abstain if they wish without providing a reason. And then that way that can get around things where if you have like a conflict of interest, you don't have to say it, but you just say, I choose to abstain for whatever reason.
I kind of like that idea. I don't know.
Then I would wonder about the balance between university representation or student representation versus community representation. And I don't know how we could achieve a balance on that, because there are certainly many more components of the university student body that are on that list right now. But conceptually, I think everybody who's participating should be able to carry some weight in the decisions.
I mean, right now, I believe the only voting members are students and community members.
Yeah,
So-
it's I think 6 students and 5 community members as it was intended. But it could be changed depending on what the group advises council, or what if council takes the advice.
I know we have some folks in the group that are or have been involved with other commissions in the city. How does this sort of voting, non-voting membership look with those other groups?
Actually, since Jessica's here, Jessica, are you still listening to us? How does it work with CIC?
So with CIC, everyone votes except staff. So I attend as a staff liaison and I do not vote, but everyone else there does. It's a kind of a similar makeup where on the CIC, people tend to assigned to the board from their affiliation. So the Talawanda assigns a person, the hospital assigns a person, the chamber assigns a person, and then et cetera. And then there's just a few community reps, but everyone has a vote except for me. That's how that works.
You know, and as a non-voting member, you know, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I've never felt, I guess when I think about this group, one of the beauties is we're bringing people from different constituencies that are brainstorming ideas. So as a non-voting member, I guess I would say I've never felt lesser than somebody else. So for whatever that's worth. Now, other people at the university may have a different opinion, but again, we're talking about how we improve the community, and I just think the right mix is more important to hear, because a lot of what it is sharing information and sharing ideas and what's going on across the street.
Yeah.
Moving to a different point of concern that I continue to bring and worry about is that I think that university administrators are put in a really tough position by us many times, because you really don't carry the authority to explain or impact the university administration's decisions that are affecting all of us in the community. And I know I don't avoid bringing up topics like that are bugging me, but I hate for it to come across as personal against any of you. And yet, if we don't get the issue addressed in some manner, I feel that to some degree the Student Community Relations Commission fails.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Steve, I've never taken anything personal, because I think it's, you know, we're all on here because we want to improve the student community relations. We want to improve Oxford, we want to improve Miami. And so, you know, I think one of the beauties of maybe being non-voting is I may not be able to answer your question today, but I could either go get the answer and have it the next time we meet, or, you know, we could bring some of the people in like we've done in the past to do a mini presentation or to answer specific questions. So I realize that doesn't help in real time, but hopefully, you know, we could turn around within a meeting or even email or something in between.
And Jessica, then that also brings in the issue of, is the town and gown thing still happening, and isn't it less formal than a commission like we are?
Yes, it's a very casual group. It's not formal at all. And it's even kind of started meeting less. It meets once a quarter for basically information sharing. There's no decisions, there's no action items. It's just information sharing at this point. So this is the group that's more, I would say, action oriented, informal in capacity for town gown.
And yet the university sends no one who really has administrative overall authority.
I mean, there's Scott.
It makes me feel better, Steve. Doug and I speak with the president's office and the finance office at my university at this point almost like every few weeks with the coronavirus, but before that it was kind of on a once a month basis. But you know, I think if there's things that you want that are a formal recommendation, you can bring it forward and we can bring that up.
Okay. Well, the reason why I suggested this agenda topic to Claire is, I guess I'm always of the mindset that we should reevaluate and not get stagnant, you know, and go with the times and change if necessary. So with ShareFest, you know, I was on the ShareFest planning committee and board for years, and every year I suggested that we reevaluate, and I think that was one of the reasons why ShareFest was able to grow, because we were in a constant state of change. We didn't stagnate from year to year. So ShareFest became like one of the biggest donation drives in the country because of it, the Move Out Week donation drives. So that experience I've tried to bring over to SCRC, and I just wanted to get thoughts. So I'll let you guys continue on if you'd like and make motions and whatever you'd like to do. So Steve?
Andrew, I'm putting you on the spot. My sense from what you're saying is that you feel like we are stagnating. And
no, we're just at the end of our year.
Okay.
So it's a time, we're just at the end of our typical year because we take a break typically. So I apologize if it came off to the group that I was insinuating that it was stagnating. That wasn't my intention.
Andrew, I think it's a great, I know I'm not a voting member or anything, but I would love to hear that other perspective from those other sections, like fraternities, sororities, and I would love to have an international student on board. I think that would be great. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, and we did briefly, maybe a year and a half ago, but I think it was very difficult for the young man to follow the conversation, unfortunately, and I don't think he had been oriented to the degree to know where or how to bring up anything that might be on his mind. Cheryl, do you remember that young man?
Yes, I do. I think he followed it. I had a meeting with him at one point. I think he was following it just
Good,
fine.
good.
I think, yeah, and I don't know what happened to him. I don't even know if he's still a student. The way the international student was selected in the past could have been the problem too. We do have a lot more student organizations, and the way it was written was that it should come from a single student organization.
Oh.
And now I think we have 16 or 17 international student organizations. And if we could write that so that it's less restrictive, that they have to be a part of a student organization, if we could just get an international student, undergrad, grad, and just an international student rather than someone from a specific organization, that would probably help.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Andrew, so I don't know who that was because I wasn't part of this then, but that's, you know, whether we pulled somebody from AAA Sharon or Cheryl, or whether we just, you know, even ASG, Megan, we could pick from the 15 or 16 groups, do some sort of application process. So finding the student reps to fill those slots is really, that's the easy part of this conversation.
Good.
So a recomposition or changing to the composition will require an ordinance to council and council approval. So just FYI, I would say that it's totally doable, but it, you know, will take a little while to get the legislation drawn up and the recommendation going. I think Glenn, you would be able to help us with that maybe?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then is there some consensus that we should move forward with all members being voting members? Megan, what's your thought as an incoming boss?
Yeah, I'm wondering, I don't know that, because my thought is, like, right now we only have three undergrad students here as representation. We're supposed to have a lot more coming and participating, and we've had students, you know, throughout the year come for a little while and then kind of drop off for one reason or another. So I'm thinking that it would maybe be more successful if, to Cheryl's point, instead of having like a very official IFC council representative as it's listed currently, that I just try to be proactive about having diverse student representation as our Miami University student that participate. If that, does that distinction make sense? I don't know anybody's thoughts on that.
Yeah, Claire, I think, or Megan, sorry, I think that's a great idea. You know, and I think to the point that Steve was making earlier with just onboarding students, if there's stuff that the rest of us can do, you know, as folks that have been on this committee for a while to help onboard those students in the fall, even if that's just meeting for coffee to kind of say, here's who we are and here's how this meeting goes. I think I'd be happy to do that. And I see some nods from other folks in the group. We definitely help with that transition. I think we want folks to feel like, as students, we know it can be scary to walk into a room full of adults. Heck, as an adult, it can be scary to walk into a room full of people you don't know. So let us know what we can do to help onboard those folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I'll know more, what that looks like when we're back in the fall, because I think, with everything going on right now, it's difficult to get a gauge for students that will be wanting to be involved in something like this at a later date.
Jonathan, what are your experiences been?
I was just about to add, so if it's been hard to fill those Greek life slots, I think what might just be better is to lower the requirements. So there's 20 plus Greek organizations on campus. Each of them have an exec board that's probably on average about 10 people. And I think the perspective, like we don't need presidents of fraternities and sororities. We don't need council members. I think just having a normal exec member would be sufficiently informational. And so I think that if we lowered that and maybe increase the slots, maybe have one business fraternity, one professional fraternity, one social fraternity, and add the sororities in too, I think that might be better. If we're simply just trying to get more perspectives, I don't think it's really vital that they be on that council.
So how about we take all of these recommendations and over the next week, we can compile kind of like amendments to our composition. And if we do, our next agenda item is to vote on whether we want to hold another meeting. So if we do, we would vote on it then. If we don't, then we would vote on it you would all vote on it on the next meeting of the coming school year. And then we would propose that to City Council, right, Andrew? It'd be like a recommendation to change the composition of the commission.
Yeah, we'd work through Glenn and Marianne Eaton, the clerk of council, to prepare that for council vote. Yeah, and prepare the legislation.
Does that sound like a good course of action for everyone to kind of like, everyone has like some good ideas right now. We can all like kind of collectively create something over the coming like week or so or two, like a real proposition.
I think we should move on it quickly so we don't forget some of the aspects that we've talked about here that are important, like whether or not they vote or that kind of thing. But I think we should do it as soon as possible.
Agreed. Okay.
Claire, can I just ask, I guess, maybe a clarifying question to a point that Steve made earlier? I think Scott's a part of this group to represent diversity, and maybe a piece about like managing expectations where, Scott might not come in and say, hey, the university is going to do X, at a meeting, but certainly I feel like Scott's been taking things back and putting information back and forth between the university. Scott, I don't know if you want to sort of add anything to that, but I guess I feel like there has been open communication there. So I just sort of wanted to loop back around to that piece about communication with Miami and this group.
Yeah, well, and Jessica could jump in too, but I mean, in my 2 years in working with these committees, I think the communication has improved greatly. Is there always room for improvement? Sure. And I think part of it is when we come to these meetings, sometimes I don't know exactly what the question's going to be. And I think there are times, kind of what Laura was saying too, I don't know that we always have the answer at that moment to do it. So some of these problems, some of these issues that we talk about are fluid, are moving, do change from week to week. So I mean, the communication I think is there. I think I said when we first started this conversation, the difference, even just the difference on the 12 of us, 15 of us, the way we use social media and communicate is, I mean, it's far different the way I use it from when Claire or Megan do. So it's somehow trying to figure out how we bridge that gap and get all of those different medias talking to each other, or you could see the same messages. And quite honestly too, I mean, I think it's also, if I go back to that week when we started shutting things down, communication did improve. And I think it's with Ted and Jessica and some other folks that there have been some more regular conversations that have been occurring the last 7 or 8 weeks that weren't happening as frequently from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I would say communication with leadership at the university is with the pandemic has been almost weekly. And then before that, things were starting to get better. Like we were working on a joint project with the Elm Street building and Amtrak and, you know, some large scale projects. And so I think those doors of how we communicate are starting to formalize and become more consistent. And so that's where we might have a channel if you want to bring something forward that we can bring it up. Doesn't mean we're going to get a response or an action, but we can at least address the issue.
But it does also indicate that there are lots of conversations that the Student Community Relations Commission is not a part of, but that they are topics that relate to what our role is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think you'll have to count on your liaison, Steve, to be honest. I really do.
And that is Glenn.
It could be Glenn, or we could talk about making that line of communication a little bit better from the city manager's office.
I think that's the best solution.
Most of it would be just to like not harp on this, but we can talk about this as we move forward, just the channel of knowing what your questions are. So, you know, your questions and up to be asked, and then we can report back. I think that's an important, instead of kind of just a carte blanche, just announcement, you know, on stuff you may or may not care about. It'd be good to know if you had a list of questions or topics that you'd like to bring up.
Okay, so how about moving forward, I send out a kind of a list, like a combination of like all the things we kind of just mentioned right now, all the recommendations we have. And if anyone would like to add anything to it or change it up a bit, feel free to send me an email. We can kind of like work on this moving forward, get to a point where we all agree on a new composition, and then we can vote on it.
I like that.
Okay, great. So how about with that, we move on to deciding whether we'd like to hold an additional SCRC meeting. Some pros of this are that this meeting would be chaired by Megan. So that would start with like the transition to the new role and really like start us off for next year, since we're not in person, we can't do it. And then we could also address like some of these, like the composition and maybe some ongoing issues that might arise from the pandemic. So this kind of comes in two parts. It's deciding whether we want to hold another meeting or not, and then when we want to hold that other meeting. So because 2 weeks from now is final exams, like Friday afternoon. So I personally have an exam, so I couldn't be here. So deciding on a date. Yeah. Does anyone feel like really strongly and would like to present a case for any of those things?
Well, if you do schedule something just to make sure we have it, and something that sort of befuddles me is that I don't know when things are happening. I don't have them on a date on the calendar. So it might be this this particular group, but it also might be, Claire, as you said, when is finals? I had no clue when is finals.
Okay.
And this year, it's even more confused. So if there was a way to keep generating some sort of calendar that this is happening this week, next week is this, that's important. So I have mixed feelings. I think it would be really good to have another meeting and have those two things talked about. But on the other hand, you should really be part of it, and you have a final, so you can't do it. So I don't know. I would go along with other people about how they felt about those trying to settle those two issues before Miami, I was going to say closes down for the summer, because it's, who knows if it's going to close down or not close down.
Well, just your first question, 2 weeks from now is a Friday, May 15th, and that's the last day of final exams for Miami. Yeah, I just want to kind of see if like generally people want to hold another meeting or not. That should be like our first thing to tackle.
Yes.
Yes.
And especially to be able to talk about the reconstitution of the commission and make any kind of recommendation for council to begin to act on before we reconvene in the fall.
Right. Okay, well, how about we hold a vote on it? That we get like a real census. So I think we'll start with like a voice vote. All in favor of holding another meeting sometime in the next coming weeks, please say aye.
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 And all against holding a vote, please say nay. I mean, I'm sorry, all against holding another meeting, please say nay. Okay, great. So I guess we're holding another meeting. We can either decide on when that date should be now. Does anyone kind of like have their calendars in front of them? Is anyone struggling to know their availability?
It's a pretty open time.
Okay. Does anyone have any objection to Friday, May 22nd at 3 p.m.?
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
I got a lot of people asking me if we could change the time from 3 p.m. until earlier the last month and a half when we started doing these virtually. So a lot of people approached me about it, but I said, well, we've already set that time and it's been out there on the web all year. So now's the time if you want to have an earlier meeting on the 22nd.
Special meeting, special time.
I would vote for earlier. So I actually have a commitment that afternoon from like 1 o'clock on. So I would vote for earlier.
Could we do maybe like
But
11
I don't get a vote, so.
noon? No, that's good to know. 11:30 noon, would that work for everyone?
No. Would not work for me. I'm busy from 11:30 to 1.
Oh boy.
Every Friday.
We could do it we could do 10:30.
Is this for the next meeting or is this for fall?
This is just for the next meeting, just for May 22nd.
Well, then I think we could probably do it.
How about if everyone agrees that 10:30 on May 22nd works for them, could you like put a little thumbs up? I think most people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Should I count that as a vote, or Andrew, do I have to like hold another voice vote?
Take another voice vote just to be sure.
Okay, sounds good.
To be safe, rather.
Propose a motion to hold our next coming meeting on May 22nd. It's a Friday at 10:30 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And all against, please say nay. There we have it. The ayes have it. And those lovely faces again in 3 weeks' time. And that meeting will be chaired by Megan Hess. So I'll be, at that point, Megan, you'll be sworn in by then, right?
I actually haven't heard anything about being sworn in yet, so we'll see. But
I think you'll be sworn in by this time next week, Megan.
Okay.
I think it's going to happen Wednesday night.
Sounds great.
If not, you will be official and get sworn in when you come back in the fall.
So just to be clear, the current composition rules state that the SCRC votes on the chair and selects the chair. So the past few years we've assumed, we haven't taken a vote on that. It's just always been assumed that it's been the Secretary for Off-Campus Affairs. So just FYI, it's up to you guys to make that decision. So that will require a vote.
At that
Should
meeting
require
or
a
now?
vote.
At that meeting or now?
I think you could do that now.
Can we do that now?
No, let's do that now.
We have our new committee though.
Yeah.
So I'm rotating off.
Let's hold a vote.
I move that
For our
Megan
confident-
Hess be appointed the chair of the Student Community Relations Commission for as soon as she assumes her new role within the student government.
Second. So all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 And I also move that this commission commend Claire Keller for her past year's service as the chair.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Steve.
Very
Hey,
good.
should we finish that vote, Claire?
Yes, all against that motion, please say nay.
Okay.
Cool. So,
And back to Steve's point, well done, Claire.
Well done, Claire.
thank you very much. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where you bring this, Megan. For Secretary elect. Okay, well, with that, I think we've touched on all our agenda items, and I'll be in touch with all of you in the coming weeks. And
Scott
Could
has
I-
something to say.
great,
So
yeah.
can I give a 30-second update? So
Sure thing.
prior to stay-at-home orders, this would have been the week where we started planning for walkabouts. So what I wanted to say to this group is we're still going to do walkabouts, but we're going to start having some conversations over the summer about what walkabouts could possibly look like with social distancing. So if you guys have some ideas over the next month or so, in my mind, we need to decide by the first couple of weeks in July. So we're going to do walkabouts, but there's part of me that says, I don't know that we want to go talk to everybody face to face. So just, if you've got some ideas from the community members that participate in the class, please let me know in the next month or so. So just want to toss that out there.
It's a good point. That's coming up. Okay, yeah, if there's anyone else that would like to throw out any announcements or any ongoing issues, projects, feel free to bring it up now.
Did everyone have a chance to read over the mini food drive? Any questions about that?
Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you want me to pick stuff up at your house, I can do that. If you want to drop it off at my house, I could do that. If you want to just go to the pantry, which is moving, that's why they updated where they want the food delivered to. So instead of going to the current pantry, which is by the cemetery, they want it at the Family Resource Center. So please note that if you do participate, we could do the Family Resource Center drop off.
Very good.
Sounds great. Okay, well then, if we don't have any other announcements, I will move to adjourn this meeting. Second. All in favor of adjourning this meeting, please say aye.
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 All against, please say nay. Great, so meeting adjourned. I will see you all in 3 weeks.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great Friday.
Thanks.
Bye.
Safe.